Thank you so much. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for stopping by the channel. If you're new, please consider subscribing. And to all of you lovely people who are returning, I thank you so much for coming back. Everybody, please leave me your comments to let me know what you think about the topic and give the video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. So we're back today with another storytelling antics of the governing body. One of my favorite series that I'm doing on this channel. The one for today is Noah, and the article that's on jw.org, or that I pulled from jw.org, is entitled, "He Walked with the True God." I'll put a link to that in the description so you can find it if you're so inclined, okay? Now, I don't know how many of you seen the one I did, the storytelling antics that I did about Enoch, but I'm gonna put a link to that right here if you haven't seen it. But Enoch is very similar. The story about Enoch that the organization told that is not mentioned at all in the Bible and how they build up this whole thing about him, that's the same thing I see with this Noah situation. Like when I think back to what I remember about Noah, it was so vivid. These pictures in my mind that was in the book was called My Book of Bible Stories when I was young. But when you read the Bible, it doesn't say anything about that. Anybody knows that reads Genesis that there's no mention of Noah doing any type of preaching or warning any of the people that this that this flood was about to happen. So we're not even going to go and read those scriptures because we already know that's not what happens. God just appears to Noah and says, "Hey, the world is wicked. I'm about to bring a flood. Let me have you build this ark so you can have you and your family go in there." And it starts raining, and then he basically takes it from there. But that's it. There is nothing about any preaching. But of course, the article has to start off with all of this excitement and emotion about what is going on in the life of Noah. And in the second paragraph, I find it very funny how they start talking about the response of these people that the Bible doesn't even say Noah was preaching to. But let's just read it, okay? Paragraph 2. The people of the region thought of them all as fools. The more the ark took shape, the more the people laughed at the very thought of a deluge that would cover the whole earth. The disaster that Noah kept warning them about seemed so far-fetched, so preposterous. They could hardly believe that a man would waste his life and the lives of his family in such a foolish endeavor. However, Noah's God, Jehovah, saw the man in a very different light. Okay, here we go. There was no preaching mentioned in Genesis, but there's all of these thoughts about the people responding to this imaginary preaching. But of course, since witnesses preach all the time, that's why they have to say all of these things. They said that Noah kept warning them about this far-fetched disaster and talks about how these people were laughing and all of this stuff. But this is because witnesses keep warning people about this far-fetched disaster called Armageddon that's supposed to come upon them, right? So when people laugh at witnesses, they'll just be able to think back to, this is the same thing that happened to Noah. But again, not according to the Bible. It only happened to Noah according to the governing body by means of this writing committee, okay? But anyway, let's go on. So at the end of paragraph 3, it says, it asks the question that's taking us into the next heading, which is, what can we today learn from his faith? So obviously Noah had some faith, right? Of course he did. And this is who Noah was according to the next subheading, a faultless man in a twisted world. Okay, let's talk about this twisted world. Paragraph 4. Noah grew up in a world that was rapidly going from bad to worse. It had been bad in the days of his great-grandfather Enoch, another righteous man who walked with God. Enoch had foretold that a day of judgment was coming upon the ungodly people of the world. Now, in Noah's day, ungodliness was far worse. In fact, from Jehovah's viewpoint, the earth was ruined, for it was filled with violence. What had happened to make things So much worse. Okay, so let's just confirm that what they're talking about in this paragraph is not true. It talks about Enoch's time, which was great-grandfather, Noah's great-grandfather, how in his time the world was filled with all of this violence, and of course it had gone from bad to worse by the time Noah was on the scene. The Bible doesn't say any of that. There is no mention of the world being filled with violence in Enoch's day. So this is a bold-faced lie, what they just said right there. Let's move on to paragraph 6. It talks about the sons of God, or the Nephilim, who were, not the Nephilim weren't the sons of God. The angels were the sons of God, but then their children, were the Nephilim. But in this paragraph, it says, vicious bullies. The Nephilim intensifies the world's brutal, ungodly spirit. Now, what I find very interesting about this is that when you look at the scripture that talks about the Nephilim in Genesis 6:4, the Bible actually refers to them as heroes. Okay? And so what's a hero? A hero is someone who's admired and idolized because they are very courageous, right? And it also calls them men of renown. Okay? So why does the paragraph call them vicious bullies? The Bible don't even say that, okay? But of course, because, the other scripture in Genesis talks about there being this violence, and this is what led to the flood, they're assuming that this violence came from these vicious bullies or these Nephilim. But there's nothing to indicate that that's how they were viewed based on Genesis 6:4. So I just find that very interesting. Okay, but then they try to talk about this whole thing about Noah's children or Noah's sons, and see why Noah must have been, had a hard time keeping his sons in line with these Nephilim running around. Because it says in paragraph 7, imagine trying to raise a family in such a world. Yet Noah did so. He found a good wife. After Noah turned 500 years of age, his wife bore him 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Together, the parents had to protect their boys from the vile influences surrounding them. Little boys tend to be filled with awe and admiration for mighty ones and men of fame, and the Nephilim were just that. Noah and his wife could hardly shield the children from every report about the exploits of those giants. But they could teach the appealing truth about Jehovah God, the one who hates all wickedness. They had to help their boys see that Jehovah felt hurt by the violence and rebellion in the world. So they're trying to say that the children would have felt awe by these mighty men. So Noah would have had something to compete with teaching them about Jehovah, because they would be admiring these exploits that the Bible talks nothing about, but they're claiming exploits in the paragraph. So it says that they would have to teach their children about the appealing truth about Jehovah God. What appealing truth? Now, I know what's taught now about Jehovah from the standpoint of Jehovah's Witnesses, but what appealing truth was Noah teaching his children back then, according to the witnesses? They always make it sound like they're doing something, they have some major information about God. The things that we know and the things that we talk about in these days are all coming from the Bible. So they have no clue what they're talking about, trying to assume that Noah was teaching them about Jehovah. But of course, they say it like that because witnesses are supposed to teach their own children about Jehovah. And so you have to imagine that Noah was teaching his children about Jehovah, so that you can look to Noah's example and continue to follow the governing body. Okay, let's look at paragraph 8 though. Parents today may well sympathize with Noah and his wife. Our world is likewise poisoned by violence and rebelliousness. Cities are often dominated by gangs of wayward youths. Even entertainment directed at young children may be saturated with violent themes. Wise parents do all they can to counter such influences by teaching their children about the God of peace, Jehovah, who will one day bring all violence to an end. Success is possible, Noah and his wife succeeded. Their boys grew up to be good men, and they married wives who were likewise willing to put the true God Jehovah first in their lives. So we see some assumptions made here, as usual, okay? But I found it silly the way they say cities are often dominated by gangs of wayward youths. That's not true. Cities are not often dominated by gangs of wayward youths. That is not true. There are some cities that have youths that are wayward and have gangs, but lots of times the gangs are concentrated in certain areas. They're not just all throughout the city, just dominating the whole city. I mean, that's like that in movies and stuff, but not in real life. Okay, so they're just trying to say this because they're trying to paint this picture about to make it seem as similar to Noah's day as they are trying to say that was back then. But then they talk about how Noah's sons grew up to be good men. Where does the Bible talk about them growing up to be good men? There is nothing in the Bible that talks about what kind of men they grew up to be. So it's like certain things. Why are you guys even saying that? You could have wrote what you wrote and just said Noah's boys grew up and married wives and whatever else you want to say. But why do you have to throw in that they grew up to be good men when the Bible says nothing about what type of men they grew up to be? It just tells you they had this son and this son and this son, and then there's that other son had this son and this son, you know? It just tells you the lineage. Okay, it's nothing about Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But regardless, this is what they like to do. Make a whole lot of speculations. So now we go to the part where Jehovah tells them to make the ark. Okay, and it says that Noah's life changed forever one day when Jehovah spoke to this beloved servant and told him of his purpose to bring the world of that time to an end. Where is there anything mentioned in Genesis that Noah was a servant of Jehovah? What would he have been doing to serve Jehovah? There was no laws at this point. There was no 10 commandments. There were no kingdom halls. Like, what is Noah doing? Why are you guys calling him a servant? Okay. You're trying to talk to witness servants of Jehovah and calling Noah that just so that you could, relate his situation to current witnesses. But it doesn't say anything about him being a beloved servant. It just says that Jehovah found him to be the only righteous person in this whole situation or in this whole world at the time. That's it. You could have just said that. Okay, but let's go on. So he's building the ark. He has all of these things going on. He has all of these measurements to measure up to and all of that. And it says in paragraph 11, they ask a very stupid question, in my opinion. It's talking about how large it was and how daunting this task was. But then it says, did Noah back off from this assignment, complain about its challenges, or alter the details to make it easier on himself? The Bible answers, Noah proceeded to do according to all that God had commanded him. He did just so. Okay, so let's just think about that real quick. If you were told by God that the only way for you to survive a worldwide flood is to build this ark, and you have to follow these specific details because you've never built an ark, you don't know how to do this, why would you start complaining? Why would you start altering details to make it easier on yourself if you was doing this thing that was going to save you and your family's life? Like, they're trying to make it seem like this was such a big thing that he didn't try to complain or alter anything. But why would he do that in this type of a situation? But of course, they are throwing this in for the witnesses so that they don't complain for all of the responsibilities that Jehovah is putting on you by means of the governing body. All of these things that seem so burdensome and so difficult that Jehovah is asking you to do because you want to be like Noah. Noah didn't complain when he was told to build an ark that was going to save his life. Why should you complain that the governing body is guilting you into doing all of these unnecessary things? But witnesses will read that and feel inspired to continue going on along their path and chastise themselves if they have felt any type of negative spirit or complained about anything that the governing body or the elders, for that matter, have asked them to do. So again, this is a way to keep witnesses in line. Let's move on though to paragraph 13. So it talks about the years passing, the ark starting to take shape. And then it references 2 Peter 2:5. It says, the Bible tells us that Noah was a preacher of righteousness. So see, this is where they get this whole preaching story that they have, because in the New Testament, it tells us that he was a preacher of righteousness. So they say in the paragraph, so he courageously took the lead in trying to warn the people of that wicked, godless society about the destruction that was heading their way. How did they respond? Jesus Christ later recalled that time, saying that those people took no note. He said that they were so caught up in the affairs of daily life, eating, drinking, and marrying, that they paid no heed to Noah. No doubt, many ridiculed him and his family. Why did Jehovah, if he really wanted to save everybody, why did he just tell Noah? Like, if the whole point is that the people that was around in that time could have gotten on the ark if they really wanted to. If they took note, they could have gotten on the ark and got saved also. If that was an option, why didn't Jehovah tell them? But it doesn't even say that, does it? If Genesis tells us that God deemed that he was going to destroy everybody except for Noah and his family, that's already telling you that it was no hope for them other people. So where is this whole thing coming from, that as if these people had a chance? God already read their heart apparently and decided that they were going to be killed. So it's not like they could have gotten on the ark anyway, or they would have. So I don't even understand the whole thing that they're trying to say with that, but that's what's said. This is funny too, right here, what it says, how Jehovah made this covenant with Noah. And then it talks about how the people may have threatened him and violently opposed him. They may even have tried to sabotage the construction project. I thought that was funny, especially the fact that they called it a construction project, because this reminds me of the Kingdom Hall construction projects. Like, do we see that going on? Do we see that people trying to sabotage the Kingdom Hall construction projects? No, we don't. But it just made it funny to me that they even said that the people may have tried to do that. That was just, yeah, they could have left that out basically, because there's nothing in the Bible that even hints at that. Okay, so paragraph 19 is talking about, paragraph 18 is talking about how there's many skeptics that would talk about how could this have happened with all of these animals in the ark, and how would this work with all of these different, species, and how would they be fed, all of this stuff. So let's look at how they address the skeptics in paragraph 19. Granted, God could have chosen to save his animal creations in some other way. However, he wisely chose a way that reminds us of the trust that he originally placed in humans to take care of all the living things on this earth. Many parents today thus use Noah's story to teach their children that Jehovah values the animals and the people he has created. I had a little comment that I wrote after they said that part. Many parents today thus use Noah's story to teach their children that Jehovah values the animals and the people he has created. He values the animals, except for the animals that he had Moses and his people sacrifice for their sins. He values the people, except for, in the Old Testament, all of the non-Israelites. And in our day, all of the non-Jehovah's Witnesses. But he values animals and people. Okay. So that was my little side note with that part. But let's go on. Okay. What of the community? They still took no note, even in the face of all the evidence that Jehovah was blessing Noah and his endeavors. They could not help but notice the animals streaming into the ark, but we should not be surprised at their apathy. People today likewise take no note of the overwhelming evidence that we are now living in the final days of this world system of things. And as the Apostle Peter foretold, ridiculers have come with their ridicule, mocking those who heed God's warning. Likewise, people surely ridiculed Noah and his family. So, they took no note. It says they could not help but notice the animals streaming into the ark. So this to me makes absolutely no sense. If this was really what happened, how is it possible that they took no note? How is that even possible? And what do we mean by took no note? Because they make it seem like the people, you notice these animals, all these animals from across the whole earth, just streaming into this ark. And you're going to just keep partying and getting married and drinking and stuff and act like that's just everyday occurrence that just happens? No, come on now. That doesn't make any sense. It had to be something else going on. And what Jesus said and what they're trying to say happened in Noah's day has to be something else, because there is no way, I don't care how silly people are, that you're going to just ignore something like that. Okay, that doesn't even make any sense. But then they try to put it to our day, where people today take no note of the overwhelming evidence that we're now living in the final days. How do you know what people are thinking about? Okay, how do you know that people aren't thinking, wow, this world is crazy, it's all this stuff going on? What you're trying to say is that they're taking no note of you guys. They're taking no note of Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what you're trying to say. That don't mean that people aren't taking note or looking around at the earth or the world and trying to, paying attention to what's going on. They just not coming to be a Jehovah's Witness. Okay? And it talks about how Peter foretold that ridiculers have come with their ridicule, mocking those who heed God's warning. Ain't nobody mocking Jehovah's Witnesses. So just stop it. Okay, nobody is worried about y'all. The only thing people are worried about with y'all is the child abuse stuff. Okay, so just be real. Okay, they're not ridiculing you for being Jehovah's Witnesses. So this whole complex of the persecution thing, they need to stop with all that. But anyway, we have come finally to the last paragraph that I wanted to consider in this article, which is the actual last paragraph, which is paragraph 23. Did Jehovah take delight in the death of those wicked people? No. On the contrary, he had given them ample opportunity to change their ways and do what was right. Could they have done so? Noah's life could answer that question. By walking with Jehovah, obeying his God in all things, Noah showed that survival was possible. In that sense, his faith condemned the world of his day. It cast the wickedness of his generation in a clear light. His faith kept him and his family safe. If you imitate the faith of Noah, you may likewise do yourself and those you love a world of good. Like Noah, you can walk with Jehovah God as your friend, and the friendship can last forever. How beautiful. What you can do is walk with the Jehovah Witness organization. Okay, you're not walking with Jehovah. But going back to this whole idea of this imaginary preaching that Genesis doesn't talk about. It says that Jehovah took no delight in the death of these people, but it says on the contrary, he gave them ample opportunity to change their ways and do what was right. Where is the proof of that? What is the ample opportunity that they're talking about? There is no mention of any preaching work. Okay? Not only that, it says to change and do what was right. What was right? What was the preaching message that they're being told? It doesn't say. So how are you going to expect somebody to change and do what is right if they don't even know that they're doing something wrong? Like, it has to be stated, and there's nothing stating any of that. And again, the scripture in Genesis says that God showed up and appeared to Noah and told Noah, I'm going to kill all of these people because they're wicked and save you and your family. So where is Jehovah giving them an opportunity? Where does it say that? It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It says that he's telling him that he's going to kill everybody. He doesn't say, hey, I want you to go preach to all these people so that they can live. Give them an opportunity to live. No, it doesn't say that. So where are we getting this from? Noah showed that survival was possible. Yes, for him and his family, because that's the hope that was presented to him and his family to build this ark. Okay, so his faith condemned the world. Okay, if he was talking about anything, it would have just been, hey, I'm on this boat and y'all don't get to be on this boat because God chose me and my family. That's how he would have been condemning them, because they would have had no opportunity, it sounds like, according to the story. But of course, they have to make it sound like this because witnesses feel that they are in this position to give people an opportunity, because Jehovah is commissioning them to give people this message so that they have this opportunity to live. But just like in the days of Noah, nobody's going to pay attention to these witnesses. There's hardly anybody paying attention to this preaching work, which means that Jehovah's Witnesses feel like their faith is going to condemn this whole world because they will be the ones to survive Armageddon. And so that's basically the message. You can walk with the true God Jehovah forever if you continue within this organization and stay faithful to it. That's your hope. But as all of us know that don't believe that crap anymore, that is not the hope. That is not true. And what I hope is that witnesses wake up and realize that that is not true. Okay. So anyway, you guys, this is the end of part 7, Noah. Next time I'm going to be talking about Joseph. Okay. And I don't quite know when that one's going to come out. I have a lot going on, but I do hope that you stay tuned. As always, I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing your comments, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Take care.